Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Let me know if you can. We are talking about self-help books, some of my favorites. That's what we're talking about today. My name is Rich Sheffrin, and I do these live streams every Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesdays from 2 to 4 p.m. like I am right now, and Thursdays, let's just remove that. Cool. Remove this destination. Yeah. All right. Save changes. Okay. Hopefully we're live. Let me know. You can hear me loud and clear. Thanks, Renan. Okay. So we're going to be talking about certain books that have made a difference in my life. And actually, I want to tell you a little bit more about that specifically, like how I approach this. I also have been sick, and I just am doing my very best to get better. In fact, I went to the gym for the first time yesterday. And I actually thought, well, 2 days ago, I worked out and I slept better that night. And so I figured time to dive in with both feet. And I worked out yesterday, like more hardcore, went to the gym. And then this morning, I woke back up with congestion and everything else. So apparently, I am not fully better yet. But I did my very best to actually attack this live stream a little bit more so than I have in the past. I didn't get as far as I'd like, and I'm going to talk to you about why. But I've also kind of want to make it my mission here as we kind of go over certain books to really not just share a book and then move on, because like I don't think at least these types of books that have had a profound impact on me are not topics that you can quickly visit and then kind of be done with it. It doesn't work that way. These are more substantial and they require more thought. And in order to reap all the rewards, you really have to actually kind of immerse yourself in some of those concepts. Now, along those lines, I've read a ridiculous number of books over the last 20 years or so. And so, as I look at all the books I've read and thinking about what to share with you, a lot of times I find it very difficult to tell you a favorite book because I don't really have any. And every book has its relevance based on a certain thing that was going on in my life at a certain time, a certain context where those strategies, concepts, tactics, whatever, like made a difference for me. And so, that's why, like, when people ask me for my favorite book, it's always somewhat of a struggle to kind of give them a book. I much prefer to ask people questions about where they're at, what they're looking for, and then recommend a book that actually can make the difference. So as always, guys, I want to make this as much of a dialogue and as little of a monologue as possible, which means that I'm asking you to actually participate, to comment, to give a thumbs up, to emote, to subscribe if you're on YouTube, to join our Facebook group if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on LinkedIn, then to connect with us. And if you're watching on Periscope, then it's time to change platforms. And so along those lines, the book that I want to share with you today, my goal was to share 5, but I think I'm only going to share 1. We'll see how far we get. But well, the book I want to share with you today is a book that I would assume most of you have not read. And its title is You Are What You Say. And it was written by 2 MDs that run a program related to Harvard about health. And it actually it dovetails into a lot of the topics that I find fascinating. And so I'm not sure when I read this book, whether or not it was impactful as how I'm going to share it with you today. However, what I can say for sure is that the concepts in this book did resonate with me hugely, but I've read about 50 books on that topic. And so it's hard for me to kind of piece together where things came together for me. So the book that we're going to talk about today, in case I didn't tell you already, is You Are What You Say. I think I just said that. And so we're going to get into that and why it's so valuable. And what I thought I would do is I actually put my book notes into Evernote for this. and then went through it once and bolded anything that I thought was critical. And then I thought what we would do together is actually go through everything that was bolded, and I will actually take the next step and start highlighting. And by the time we're done, my hope is that you have a really good, clear understanding of this book. In addition to that, I also have my notepad out because my hope is that while also going over this with you, I might want to draw some stuff out. So if that sounds good, let me know. Give me feedback, right? We're going to dive into this book. I'm going to open up I got my Evernote working again with my streaming computer. So we are good to go. And with that, I'm going to throw it up on the camera here. Well, first, let's say hello to everyone. Then we'll kind of dive in. So Mr. Miller is going to be 40 minutes late. That's fine. You can always hit rewind. Hey, Renan from Brazil. You're curious about this one. Thank you for sharing. Of course, if you share, please put #shared so I can thank you personally. Thank you for letting me know that. Hey, Michael on YouTube. Good to see you. And Jason in Tampa on Facebook. And Stephen in Nairobi, Kenya on Facebook. And Hamza Malek. Hey, Rich, how are you feeling? Are you feeling well this week? You look much better than last week. I'm feeling better, but like I said, today I got sick again, or I woke up sick. Don't know if you guys saw what I posted to Instagram, but kind of proud of that. Let me share it real quick in case you guys have not seen it. I can't really do it. Okay. Really proud of the difference. I posted a photo of me at 30, 40, and 50. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I am feeling better, but not 100%. And the challenge is that I worked out hard yesterday, and then last night as I was going to bed, my throat started to bother me. Now it's not bothering me, but I'm stuffed up. So yeah, just not sure. Hello, Glenn in Highland Beach. Always good to see you on Facebook. And I wish I was recovering faster. I really want to push myself and get back into full swing. Hello, Gogo. Good to see you. Is this one, You Are What You Say, a Harvard doctor's 6-step proven program for transforming stress through the power of language? Yes, that is the book. But I want you to understand that it's the concepts in that book, right, that dovetail into that book, Language in the Pursuit of Happiness, that dovetail into a ridiculous number of other books, right? Let me see here if I can show you. Let's see here. I'm going to go, whoops, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. Okay, that's the book, and we'll go over that in a second. I'm going to go to another one. That's that. And then I'm going to go here and, whoops. Okay, don't know if you can hear me right now. You should. Can you? Can you hear me right now? If you can hear me, hopefully you can. Then what you'll see here is a list of my notes, or a list of my book notes rather, nope, that's the wrong one. Where is oh, there it is. Here it is. A list of book notes. Okay, cool. That are all in my Evernote that these are in the process of being bolded. This one I fully bolded already. This is in the process of highlighting. So we're going to take this book here, but like my goal is actually to go through all these books with you over time. Because it's the concepts in these books that have made a huge difference in my life. And that's what ultimately my hope is to share with you. So that is the book though, Renan. And yeah, so let's go back now here, and go back to me for a second. And let's see here. Cool. Let me just get rid of that. Your scheme for today sounds good. Awesome. Good. Cool. This sounds awesome. Thank you, Hamza. Lisa in Miami Beach. Hello, Lisa. Good to see you. And Stephen shared. Thank you so much, Stephen. I really appreciate that and appreciate you. The 30, 40, 50 photo of yours is inspiring me. Huge congrats. Thanks, man. Rick, you're the most generous fella on the consultant space. Thanks. My pleasure, Mark. Hamza, the photo is amazing. Inspired me to work out. Cool. Yeah, I hate being sick. Hello, you fine people. Great to see you again. From the singer, get sage and thyme and make a lot of tea with raw honey and lemon will do the trick. And it's tastier than it sounds, not like stuffed chicken. I feel fine. It's just that when I push myself, then I start not feeling well. Cool. You can hear me. Cool. That's awesome. Oh, hey there. And hi, Rich from Raleigh, North Carolina. Cool. All right. So I'm going to grab a coffee real quick, just from that fridge over there. And then as I do that, we are going to go into the actual book. Okay. So that's the book. Be right back. And you can take a look at some of those names. The second name, Umberto Maturana, and that's the second name. And the third name, Fernando Flores. And the fourth name, Richard Heckler, are all people who are tremendous, really tremendous people who've written tremendous books, who have really kind of changed the game in a lot of things. And we're going to cover Umberto Maturana and Fernando Flores in here. Even though I've read books of theirs separate, I thought it would be too much to go into their books when we can kind of get an overview of what these revolutionary thinkers kind of came up with that I've incorporated into my life and has worked really well for me. And I'm sharing it with you with the hope that it can have the same impact for you. So let me grab a coffee just so that my throat doesn't get worse, and then we'll dive straight in. At any point, though, as usual and as always, ask me questions, give me comments, thoughts on what I'm sharing, because ultimately I'm doing this for you guys. Hopefully you can read that. Let me know if you can. Of course, letting me know that you can also just is another way that we keep the activity in the thread, which is useful. So is that too small? Can you read it? I can speak fine for long times without straining. It's more the working out that's the problem. Thank you, Sid, for sharing. Yeah, can you guys see this? Is it big enough? Like, I just don't know what it looks like on your guys' screen. But can you read this? Or do I need to make this a little bit smaller? Bigger, please. Okay, that's what I was afraid of. So let's take a look at what this looks like. I'm going to move this like this first. And then I'm going to make it bigger. All right. And I guess I can make it just a little bit bigger. There we go. And make this a little bit smaller. All right. Cool. That better? Okay. So the book, like I said, is You Are What You Say. And it's written by Matthew Budd, Larry Rothstein, and Patch Adams. Many of you might have heard of Patch Adams with the movie. I think there was a movie called Patch Adams about his kind of his way of injecting humor and life into the medical process. Okay. So Umberto Maturana, who had the strength and courage to base his thinking about human nature on solid biological evidence, even though the implications clash with the Western mind. And Fernando Flores, thinker, teacher, and entrepreneur, who had the breadth to reconcile diverse strands of scholarly and practical endeavors into a coherent philosophy and to the wisdom to sense the implications of his work for human life. So Fernando Flores, Umberto Maturana, these are some of the giants that all of transformation is based on. So Werner Erhard with S based some of his stuff on the work of these guys, or Landmark Forum, or LifeSpring, or anything as it relates to anything that relates to transformation is built on these giants. Okay, so let's go. Okay. Inspired by the work of Umberto Maturana, Maturana has been suggesting that we do not control our language, it controls us, right? Now, this is very much like the pursuit of language and the pursuit of happiness, right? That we do not control our language, it controls us. This is a theme. And the better that this theme starts to actually sink in, the more powerful that you can live your life. And I'll explain why in a few minutes. Our language flows from our structure and in turn shapes us. People can be imprisoned by their language. All right. So the best way to make your dreams come true is to wake up. Does your life seem more like a struggle than a work of art? If so, what is happening? So these are questions, right? So I always like to collect questions. Whoops, no, I don't. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it this way. So these I would normally highlight, right? Like this. And if you have questions about why I am highlighting this, by all means ask, right? So does your life seem more like a struggle than a work of art? If so, ask yourself, why is this happening in my life that is causing me to suffer and not feel well? Do you have serious problems at home or work? Are you overwhelmed because you can't say no to those around you? Do your children drive you crazy? Do you feel like you never have enough money? Do you distrust others? Do you feel unloved and joyous most of the time? Are you embarrassed? Often embarrassed, isolated, or upset. Now ask yourself this. Do I want to change these circumstances? Do I want to learn my life, learn to live a different life, one filled with joy, health, and happiness? If the answer is yes, then this book is for you. Through a few simple exercises that involve acknowledging the impact of your personal history. Okay, so acknowledging the impact that your personal history has had on your life, learning how your practice and language affects and reflects who you are and how you can use language in a healthier way. Gaining control of your moods and emotions, and becoming aware of the automatic thoughts in your head. We all have automatic thoughts in our head, and I can tell you that they're generally not empowering. For the longest time, I used to ask myself this question, even when I wasn't. I would ask, it was default question, and I would say, "Why am I so tired?" Like, this was the thought I had in my head. Even when I wasn't tired, it was like a way of getting out of work. Was a question that I could ask myself inside my head, like, "Why am I so tired?" Hoping to come up with an answer that would then relieve me of having to do work. All right. So as you can see, I'm only looking at the stuff that I bolded because that was the important parts of what I already highlighted. Scientific studies to the Way of Wellness course show that our patients achieve valuable and sustained improvement in their emotional lives, their physical well-being, and their daily functioning. In their emotional lives, they are less anxious and depressed and more trusting. Patients who participate in this course have always had fewer physical complaints. All right, you guys with me so far? A learning space. One of the keys of the wellness program is that it creates what I call a learning space. People learn in several distinct ways. One way I call informal or instructional learning. A teacher or a book tells you the facts or procedures and something. I'm still the same person. In this kind of learning, the instructions dominate. Who the learner is almost irrelevant. A second kind of learning involves apprenticeship. Right? This time-honored approach to learning involves a master. It takes time. And most important, the objects you initially turn out generally look like the master's, better or more likely worse copies. Your learning is very much tied to the style of the master. Your personal creativity and uniqueness are secondary in apprenticeship. A third kind of learning is self-help learning. This method is characterized by tips and techniques on how to do things better. Tips and techniques orient you to the kinds of actions and principles of effectiveness. The advice also tends to be concise and pithy, not a lot to learn, and quick, fast food learning. This learning is very consistent with American values and culture. The problem with this kind of learning is execution. These books focus on outcomes, but don't provide a lot of advice on how to achieve these outcomes. This book will encourage an entirely different kind of learning from those described above, what I call embodied learning. We're going to highlight that. This kind of learning entails discovering how you routinely and automatically behave in a given situation. Then using distinctions and practices, you will learn to change your capacity to act. So you're going to see that word distinctions come back up quite often. And if you've been on my live streams, then you know how important I think distinctions are. They are the building blocks of mental maps. They are the building blocks of performance and expertise, etc. Embodied learning involves learning to act in living. Okay, I like that. You are a fielder. You're learning. All right. You are a field as a player, not on the sidelines as a coach or in the stands as a spectator. Blah blah blah. You are the show. Simple to understand, but far from easy to underachieve. As you'll see, old habits are hard to change because they have the force of biological inertia behind them. This will all make sense soon if it's kind of unclear. Sustainable change takes awareness of what's driving the behavior, but more importantly, new practices for changing the behavior and a belief that change is possible. It parallels many of the features of what in the martial arts, it's called a dojo, except this is a dojo for health. The spirit of the dojo. Okay, let's see. I'm going to highlight that. And dojo literally means awakening place. Participants are urged to wake up to the unconscious tendencies that interfere with their martial arts performance. We're not going to take the martial arts performance because that's kind of irrelevant to me, but there we go. Okay. In this dojo, you are a student. Are you willing to be a student? Are you willing to not know? Are you willing to be confused at times for the sake of later clarity? Are you willing to strive for precision in your observations about yourself? Are you willing to make mistakes? All beginners do. Are you willing to practice? A dojo is built on a family of precise distinctions. By distinctions, I mean a word that point to specific ways of acting or seeing. In this dojo, students go into action with the distinctions given to them by the sensei and do their routines. The sensei then guides the students in the observation of themselves in action. Seeing oneself is sometimes very difficult, but this method allows the student to see himself or herself through the eyes of the sensei and then to try the practice again, making corrections. At some point, the student begins to embody more and more of the sensei's critical eyes and avoids errors. All right, cool. All right, there we go. Okay, the book in chapter 1, okay, just going over what the book is, right? Chapter 2 reminds you that you are a biological being. Your knowledge and ability to know things must follow biological principles. You can only be and do what your body allows. In chapter 3, I show how individual experiences and cultural history shape your identity as a person, including your reactions, emotions, actions, etc. You'll see that there are no accidents in life. At every moment, you do what you can do. You can act in no other way. I introduce you to a new understanding of language in chapter 4. Most people believe that language describes reality. I argue that language brings forth reality. You know the all right. Does that make sense? I'm hoping that this makes sense. It might be a little confusing to you right now, but I imagine that as we progress, it will get easier and easier for you to understand this. In chapter 5, I look at moods and emotions. Here I emphasize that moods occur in the body and alter not only the bodily function and perception, but also affect health and daily activity. Well, dojo is just, Emmy wanted to know, like, can I explain dojo again? Dojo is just what you call a martial arts studio, but he's using that term because of its connotations, right? So, generally any place where you practice martial arts is called the dojo, and the teacher or professor is called the sensei. Not critical for you to learn that, but if you understand what a dojo is, it's just helpful because it's similar. So most of my patients think they are powerless over their moods. This is not so. In chapter 6, putting it all together, I remind you of the importance of self-awareness, which is essential for personal learning and transformation. Yeah, I mean, self-awareness is where it's at, guys. I hope you'll find the material in this explanatory chapters thought-provoking, and that it will encourage self-examination and questioning. But most people read as observers standing outside looking in without much personal involvement. You'll learn about something rather than learning about it like experientially, right? And so what we're trying to avoid by doing it this way is that you can actually get more of an experience and not just be passive here. And that's why engaging with me is just so valuable for me as far as rankings and getting more people on, but for you, because it helps you embody the learning. By learn about, I mean the kind of learning like watching a movie. In that situation, you're a spectator, you don't get shot, blah, blah, blah. Are you content simply to learn about this program, or are you going to live it? Are you willing to be the lead actor in the movie about living life peacefully and in good health? Lifelong learning. What then is lifelong learning? The kind of learning that this book provides you with that has no end. Each time, your life can be the same way. Each time you return to the sonata of your life with intention and attention, you'll see something new. You may ignore what you see. People often do. Everything has its time. Or you may observe how an old narrative of fear twists your current behavior. or you may make a declaration to change something. The choice is yours. The aim of your journey could be the experience and expression of love, clarity, and freedom, not a specifically designed goal, destination, or reward. This book is not about the game. It is a goal. Its goal is to help you manifest your natural capacity for learning and satisfaction with your life, for love, compassion, and wellness. The I am the way I am syndrome. A major enemy of lifelong learning is living in the interpretation, I am the way I am and I can't change, right? These statements are ones of low self-efficacy, distrust, and arrogance. They are expressions of deep fears and shards of the past hurts. They reveal a person at risk for suffering and even illness. More importantly, these attitudes inhibit learning and blind you from the realization that you are the author. As the famous physicist David Bohm pointed out, your system of thought hides itself as the author of what you see, think, and do. When you fall into distrust, arrogance, or self-denigration, you believe you are describing reality, but you're not. Your thoughts generate a closed mind, an inflexible person, a victim, not a warrior. You guys getting that? All right. So that's the I am the way I am and can't change kind of mood or way of perceiving life. For example, you can be inspired by someone's skillfully handling of situations that are similar to yours. Another motivation for change can come when you realize you have the potential for learning and action. You may begin to question the self-imposed barriers that limit your growth. You might ask, can I be my own worst enemy? When you do this, you open yourself up to learning. We are all our own worst enemy, guys, for the most part. I know that biologically, your structure is plastic, capable of change. Whatever your age, sex, background, or educational level, this biological truth holds. I've seen students in assisted living homes with an average age of 88 learn. Because of my experience, I believe that your most troublesome areas of life are where the most learning will occur. To do this, you'll need to make a clear distinction, become aware of your current tendencies, design new behaviors and practice. In short, you'll need to become a beginner. For most of us, being a beginner is to be avoided at all costs. We need to look good, to be in control, and to appear to have the answers all the time. Buddhists strive for what they call beginner's mind, the mind of not knowing. Such not knowing is not blindness or ignorance. Rather, it involves a state of being present to what is. All right. So it involves a state of what is. Whoops. Okay. All right. This is what I'm highlighting here, right? And if we get through this, I'll share these with you when we're done. Does that sound cool? It does resonate slightly because of my thoughts about hypnosis, but it's also because I am such a huge fan of Werner Erhard, and this is some of the grounding material. Like, it's other people looking at the same material he did and coming away with certain observations. Exercise, design, and content. The exercises that follow each explanatory chapter will help you achieve beginner's mind and open yourself up to learning. With practice, you'll become more competent at generating a mind of freshness and presence, not the boring mind of repetition and history. Beginner's mind will become more available to you. I suggest that you spend several days practicing the exercises in each chapter. Do as many of them as you can, given the other events in your life. Pace yourself. You need to learn. You need time to learn, observe, and practice. After each of the exercises or questions, I've left spaces for you to take notes or jot down reminders. For me, writing makes me more specific about what I'm saying. For me, too. I don't know about you guys. Okay. So it's interesting, right? Because a lot of people, I would think, I want to put this up, and I'm not picking on you at all, Hamza. Rich, this book sounds so basic so far. Why is this one of your top 5? Well, because I don't think most people live this. And while I think it's really easy to read this book and say, I already know, right? But I think if you read this and look at how you live your life, it opens up opportunities that currently I think most of us are not even aware of because we don't have the distinctions for it. So what I would say, Hamza, is that this book covers a lot of concepts that I'm a big believer in, that I believe that as good as my life is, and my life is pretty good, it could be much better if I could be better, and being better would be more in line with being more in the moment, using when I'm upset to actually alert me to areas of my life where potentially there is something below the surface that's actually something I need to know. And so what I would say is that as it relates to this book, I would prefer, if you trust me, to not make a judgment about the book until we've gotten far enough so that you can see where it's leading to. Yeah. Anything that I've learned is to return after anything that I've learned is to return after a day or two to what I wrote and modify or add to it. Right. Okay. Keys to happiness. The inability to look in the right place is the reason most of us struggle in life. Our intentions are good, but we repeat old destructive patterns because that's where we believe the light is. We never question the assumptions that lead us away from discovering the keys of our happiness. So that's the bigger question. And I would imagine that most of us have assumptions that stand in our way for greater happiness. In Eastern philosophy, there exists the notion of bardo. A bardo is a sticking place, a problem area. It is a moment in life where you can no longer tolerate what is happening around you. Your blame of others, your old explanation of why you have the problems in your life lead you nowhere. Even you are tired of your excuses, the suffering is simply too great. You may even hit several bardos in the course of doing this program. The question is not, will this occur? But what will you do with this reaction, which hides uncertainty and fear? Will you deny it and blame others? Will you seethe with anger? Will you fall into despair that life will never be good again? Or will you accept that you have encountered yourself in another bardo and that you, at the moment of choice, a choice between letting go of old static explanations and committing to learning or believing your old explanations and quitting? Now, I think that, so I had a gentleman, and I have this book, right? This gentleman came and spent time with me. He shadowed me. He's a coach on waking up, on awakening. His name is Jerry Stocking. And he spent days with me, and he wrote me the Book of Rich, which was an explanation of lots of things that he saw that I didn't see about my life. And in one of those things, in the book, which is like 70 pages long, about me, for me to realize, one of the things in there was the time when I got really upset about something, and he wanted me to look at that upset as like go deeper into it so that I can really understand what is below the surface that's causing that upset. And I don't know if that makes any sense with what I'm saying right now, like with what I'm reading, but to me, these are very much aligned, right? And if you understand, like from different live streams that I've done about distinctions, right? That they live in language and they help us process reality and create boundaries so that we can identify things. There are distinctions as it relates to you, as it relates to what you do in language that for most of us, we're not aware of. And because we don't have those distinctions, we're less effective in our use of language and doing anything. And that's where I want to help, hopefully where I want to get us to. All right. So chapter 1, my black bag is half empty. I, like every person, live in a world that looks certain. I know what I know, and I know and what I don't know. This certainly is not only true of external things, but extends to our knowledge of ourselves. We know who we are, what is possible and what is not, what we fear and what we welcome. Living in a network of truths about how things are and are not can be dangerous to your health if you never question the source of these truths and ask how you know them. The most obvious source of truth comes from our culture. When we live in the culture, we are not always aware of the cultural nature of these truths, right? They become our common sense. Nonetheless, they determine the shape of our lives. Interaction with someone from another culture who lives other truths propels us into awareness, right? The kind of mistaken understanding of the world is easy to point out if we look at the past, right? Like the earth is flat. But it is much harder to see in our own lives in the present. Most of us never question how we know what we know. One of this book's goals is to help you uncover your common sense, those assumptions about yourself, about others, and about life that shape you but remain unexamined. So here are some truths that people live with. Men can't be trusted. I must strive for perfection. I can't learn as easily as others can. People are dangerous. My life is hopeless and no one can help me. Everyone is better than me. What are your truths? Even though we're early in our journey, begin asking yourself that question. What are your truths? And that's something that everyone should think about. All right. Descartes' world, right? Like other cultures, as I've said, medicine contains underlying assumptions about how things are, underlying values about what is good and bad, and a system of structures and rewards that reinforce the culture. I was actually being immersed in a culture in which the mind and body were seen as separate. I didn't know it at the time, but this culture had a spiritual godfather whose name was Rene Descartes. He's talking about med school here. Descartes proposed that qualities like emotion, values, goodness, courage, evil were functions of the mind governed by separate principles from those of the machine-like body. 300 years later, his truths were still carried by the culture. Until the rise of modern neuroscience in this century, this division between mind and body was the foundation of Western medical knowledge. It became the truth about how the world works. Okay, my half-empty black bag. Kurt Kronk, a researcher who was then at the Walter Reed Hospital studying patient populations, found that 14 complaints accounted for more than half of patients' visits. The complaints included fatigue and low energy, intestinal and bowel problems, difficulty with sleeping, headache, backaches, etc. Even more staggering was that physicians could find no underlying disease in almost 90% of people with these 14 common complaints. Okay, think about that. 90% of the most common complaints are not caused by physical maladies. Okay. Kronk reported that these patients had chronic life problems, and this suffering was manifested in bothersome bodily symptoms and temporary emotional upsets. These people went to work, cared for their families, met their obligations. They simply didn't feel well. They weren't sick in bed, but they were nonetheless suffering. Behavioral medicine. Why did these people have symptoms without disease? They were malingerers. They were really feeling pain, but why? As I asked these questions, I began to notice mind-body connections in my own life. As is so often the case, when I finally got to the right question, the answer appeared right in front of me. You too have your story, and it affects your life and your health. Okay, and this is about different patients, which we don't need to talk about. See, we're making some progress. Pretest, you are what you say. Before we proceed to the first exercise, I invite you to take this brief test. It is designed to help you begin to think about your strengths and learning points and to assist you in developing your awareness of how your thoughts and feelings affect your health. Remember, we are doing this. What we're doing here is building a base of awareness as the first step in your learning. Observe any reactions you might have to this test. You may feel resistant, guilty, angry, or other emotions. How to use this test. These tests allow you to assess yourself in 3 important basic dimensions of human life and therefore health. Self-efficacy, a can-do attitude that some people may have, social ease, a comfort and intimacy that some people have with others, emotional skills, the ability that some people have to know their emotions and use their emotional reactions constructively in relationships. Assessing yourself in these 3 areas will help you focus your learning, introduce you to the notion of the mind-body connection, and allow you to note your own progress in learning. Each of these 3 dimensions has 2 components. For example, I should probably just 3 important and basic. Let's do that, right? Each of these 3 dimensions has 2 components. For example, self-efficacy is comprised of ambition and also the ability to learn and change. Can you see that can-do people tend to be ambitious and can also learn and change? They are flexible and take hold of new projects in life with confidence. So to assess yourself in self-efficacy, you first turn to each of those separate scales, ambition and learning, and rate yourself on each. Be honest, not self-critical or arrogant. Rate yourself from 0 to each on each scale. Then go, okay, I don't know where this self-efficacy graph is. I'm going to have to go find it and find the horizontal bar labeled ambition. Notice at the bottom, okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So this is about different quadrants, how you compare to different patients. So let's just talk about self-efficacy. Self-efficacy. This behavioral characterization reflects 2 dimensions of human existence: the presence of ambition and the sense that one can make the changes necessary to achieve that ambition. Together, they allow a person to pursue meaningful goals. Self-efficacy and meaning are major health enhancers. Their absence is a health risk. Social ease. I have combined 2 dimensions in this way, looking at human behavior. The first is trust. Are you able to enter into trusting relationships, even intimate ones? Second, are you able to retain autonomy and dignity in linguistic interactions with others? To decline gracefully, to listen to the assessments of others constructively, and to make requests when necessary. These two dimensions taken together define what I call social ease and represent a major health enhancer or risk factor. I'm going to just actually highlight this because I think this is important. And I'm going to do social ease as well. All right. Emotional skills. The set of behavioral skills has recently been described by Daniel Goleman, the author of bestseller Emotional Intelligence. Emotional intelligence appears to be important for success and health. In general, there are two aspects of emotional intelligence. First, people with high emotional intelligence are aware of their current feelings moment to moment. Second, they take care of their emotional lives. When they're in discomfort, they make that known to others in a non-blaming behavioral, behavior changing way. Okay. So here are the different patients. Gretchen is a perfectionist, so lofty goals are a threat to her and a setup for not being good enough. Learning produces great anxiety. She might make mistakes. She trusts people, but defers to their judgment so that she is continuously placing herself in an anxiously dependent role, right? So you can see that, right? Like, in other words, when someone's a perfectionist, there's something behind that. There are certain beliefs, thoughts, and feelings that are behind perfectionism, right? I've shared the thought that perfectionism is trying to get the world to believe something about yourself that you don't believe about yourself, right? Now, when it comes to self-efficacy, right? Obviously, there has to be something with self-efficacy if you're a perfectionist, right? And so I just want people to understand that, like, while this book might seem simple, I would venture to guess that many of the issues that you struggle with, that I struggle with, are based on repetitive patterns of thought that we don't even realize that we're thinking, like, as it relates to the problem, okay? So here's some exercises. You see and act in a world that reveals itself to you as a reflection of your background, beliefs, and assumptions. The world mirrors your mind. You see what you can see. Probably useful to go over all these points. In medical school, I learned the Cartesian model of scientific thinking, which separates the mind from the body. From this perspective, medicine's common sense doctors have made enormous discoveries and uncovered fundamental and useful insights. It's helped doctors become vastly better diagnosticians of physical illness. When I began medical practice, I quickly discovered that my patients' suffering could not be understood only from a strictly disease orientation. Many were symptomatic but not ill. As part of my search for answers on how to be a better doctor, I attended a seminar at the recommendation of a friend. There, I watched a fellow participant named Barbara experience an asthma attack. To my amazement, a conversation between Barbara and the seminar's leader arrested her attack because he's a doctor. He wanted to rush in and actually use something physical to help, right? To my amazement, right, this experience has profoundly altered my notion of healing. I couldn't explain what had happened. However, the incident motivated me to seek an explanation that I could use for myself. Okay. The awareness exercise. The practice of meditation is a major element in the development of awareness. All of the world's great religions have a meditative practice. In Buddhism, meditation is the central practice. Meditation has two major benefits. First, it helps you achieve a relaxed and open body. A body in this state facilitates learning, listening, and being present. Second, and most important, meditation supports and fosters self-reflection. It helps you to witness and observe the way your automatic thinking shapes your behavior and your world. The more you meditate, the more space is created for observing and letting go of past ways and acting, and for learning new ways of being. It is very difficult to be aware of the witness in any given moment in your life. Meditation helps cultivate that. And then there are schools of thought like Gurdjieff, right, that talk about really self-awareness being the key to everything, that the way that you make yourself better is by becoming more aware of what it is you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling in every moment. You don't just go about trying to fix anything. You just become aware. I meditate every morning for this reason. I urge you to develop the practice of meditation. It benefits its benefits deepen with repetition. Each time you do it, the experience will be different. In every moment, one moment tired, one moment joyful, one moment harassed by all you have to do. You begin to observe your repertoire of learned reactions in life. And that's really the benefit. It's not that like having a peaceful mind. It's the fact that you pick up on the disruptions that are going on that in your automatic thoughts. When you begin to meditate, do it for 5 or 10 minutes. If you can increase the duration to 20 minutes, you should do so. Look at the time as a gift to yourself. Do your meditation each day. Follow it with the exercises for reflection. All right. I'm hoping that you guys find this interesting. Can you just like check in with me? Tell me like what you like about the way I'm doing this, what you dislike about this. I'm not going to take offense to it. Ultimately, I want to figure out the best way to share books with you guys. Automatic writing. I don't know if you guys do that. I do that in my journal from time to time. Normally when you write, you have something to say to an imagined or real reader. In automatic writing, you pick a topic and write at a fast pace for a time period, say 5 minutes. Whatever happens, you keep writing until your time is up, even if nonsense comes out. Cool. Okay, you guys are enjoying this. Okay, cool. Automatic writing is a practice that pays great dividends. When you write your thoughts down, they become clearer to you. Such clarity is vital in discovering your truth. Automatic writing has another benefit. If you write as rapidly as you can without stopping to think and ponder, you'll see amazing associations between your memories, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and actions. Your pen may go to strange places, but there are no accidents. The places you go and reflect your system of thought, respect what you write. This exercise is a wonderful way to expand your awareness of your system of thought. How to practice automatic writing. 1, write in the space provided in the book, right? Find a quiet place, choose a topic, incident from childhood, what have you, write for at least 5 minutes, right? The idea is to write without thinking. I think you guys get that. Okay, when you're done, take a moment to read and reflect on what you wrote. Did you see anything new about yourself, about your body and your history? Just notice what came up for you when you set your pen free, right? All right. You as a learner, exercise 1. In this exercise, I want you to reflect on your experiences with learning, especially moments when you had to stretch to learn. Close your eyes and imagine an event at home, work, or in school, in private when you were challenged with a learning task. Reflect on your thoughts when challenged by the task. What did you say to yourself? Notice how your body feels when you remember a learning moment when you were challenged. Was there any tension in your body? What consequences did you anticipate, success or failure? Has your attitude towards learning shape your life? Take notes here to use when you do automatic writing later on. Handwriting is better because it's easier to embody it. It's slower than typing, and therefore forces you to really think about the words a little bit more as opposed to typing. Okay, you as a learner, exercise 2. In this exercise, I want you to learn something new and observe yourself while learning it. Pick a learning task for yourself that is a stretch for you, but that you would genuinely like to accomplish, and make sure you can learn it in a relatively short period. As you engage with the learning, listen to your thoughts, your background conversation. Notice the thoughts in your head that are like a sports announcer commenting on your performance from the broadcasting booth. Notice any urge to give up or an attitude that says, I need to get this right quickly, or this is too hard. Automatic writing, just for you, Emmy, I think it was Emmy, is when you write in your journal or any place else really, but you don't have any intention of what it is you're going to write. You're going to write where it takes you, and you're writing fast. So you might write on a topic, but you have no idea what you're going to say, and it's just like not editing yourself, just writing whatever comes to mind. As you enter learning, become aware of any changes in your body, such as muscle tension, sweating, a pounding heart, fatigue. When you finish the exercise, ask what you learned about how you learned, then ask, how has this automatic reaction affected my life? If you're not a great learner, then it might be because of this, right? It might be based on what you tell yourself when you're learning, right? Like here's an example. I personally tried juggling. I bought a set of juggling balls and began. I noticed that my body reacts in a stereotyped way when I perceive the challenge of learning. I was alone, so I wasn't embarrassed, but I experienced a tense, jaw forward, anxious kind of propelling into the work. I had a strong sense of urgency to get it quickly. And I noticed that my body became tense, which made the juggling or getting it even more difficult. Each time I dropped the ball, I automatically said, damn it, as if I should know how to juggle genetically. Okay, just as an example. Your reactions may have either propelled your learning forward or impeded it. See if you can discern the patterns in yourself as a learner. You as a learner, number 3. Close your eyes and recall a time when you were learning from a teacher. Now imagine that teacher is criticizing what you're doing. You've made some mistakes. Notice your reactions. Are you defensive? Are you embarrassed? Are you grateful? Even though we need and want teachers, our bodies sometimes react negatively to the correction of a teacher. Why do you suppose this is? Right? Blah, blah, blah. What was your characteristic relationship to your teachers, to different kinds of teachers? Okay. You as a learner, exercise 4. Okay, here are some questions about yourself as a learner. If you're tired now, come back to them later when you're fresh because they'll show you a lot. First, read them quickly just to get a sense of their content. Then read each one slowly, pausing for reflection. Turn your awareness on yourself and notice what is triggered for you in your mind, in your body, in your thoughts, and your emotions. Then read them a third time and answer the question, when did I become this way? Are you willing to admit that you don't know something, or is it difficult for you? Is it difficult for you to admit that someone else knows something that you don't? Do you have problems with having someone teach you, including criticizing your performance? What are your reactions? Do you think that you can learn anything that you set your mind to and have a good teacher for, or is your learning limited? What mood do you fall into when you begin to learn something difficult? Are you embarrassed about making decisions, about making mistakes? And how are you about practicing the discipline necessary to learn? Take notes on what you've seen about yourself. Automatic writing revisited. First, review the notes that you made about yourself and read your notes slowly and carefully. Then write for nonstop on a blank sheet, right? How about what you see yourself as a learner? How has learning been for you? What is your history as a learner? Have your attitudes affected your learning history? Where do these attitudes come from? I can tell you that I have really good attitudes about learning. I think that's one of the things that helps me learn, right? That I don't get intimidated by learning very often. As you continue with these workbook chapters, okay, blah, blah, blah. Guys, we made it into chapter 2. We are animals, but we have forgotten. Cool. We think with the whole body. Taizen Deshimaru Zen Roshi. That's what I want to call thought, which includes emotion, body, state, physical reaction, perception, and everything else. The physicist David Bohm. Okay. Barbara's response during the S seminar showed me something I had never been aware of, the patterned reactivity of the human body. Barbara is not alone in her unthinking reaction to events in her life. We are all Barbaras in our own special way. Like Barbara, my physical response occurred before thought, automatically. Also, like Barbara, my tendency has physical consequences. I carry a lot of tension in my back and neck, especially when I feel challenged. I don't wheeze like Barbara, and different circumstances trigger me, but this is my version of patterned reactivity. We are all biological beings. So how does this triggering happen? Traditional understanding of bodies was valuable but incomplete. I knew I needed to know more to be able to make sense of this experience. I needed new eyes of understanding to see not just Barbara, but this phenomena in all people, right? And that was relieving a asthma attack, something that he thought had to be done medically, was done conversationally. Okay. We are biological beings, right? Okay. Here's my clinical dilemma. There was no intellectual bridge of understanding to connect Barbara's mind to her wheezing. Descartes ruled my world. The connection between thinking and the physical body is not absent, however, in other cultures. For example, Eastern disciplines like Buddhism often use the term suffering to refer to a state of uneasiness of thought and body simultaneously. People automatically fall into this state when their life journey doesn't go as they think it should. In the Eastern view, suffering is not a mind state, but a state of body and mind as one, the whole person state. Okay. Okay, I'll put that there. In contrast, modern Western medicine addresses pain as a symptom that indicates that part of the body is not working or is injured. Pain is in the body. Pain has quality, duration, location, and intensity. The whole person or any process that we call mental, like frustration, despair, fear, is not part of this view. Doctors do not ask, what does that pain mean for you? What is your experience with pain? What are your fears? The Western medical perspective is based on the understanding the parts of people. In this view, if you add up all the parts and coordinate them, you get a whole being. When a part fails, it hurts and it must be fixed. Obviously, you and I are more than the sum of our parts. We have unique cares, intentions, commitments, feelings, etc. We have preferences. Oh, whoops. Is this not? Let me just close it. Okay. All right. Oops. All right. We have preferences, love for our children, a passion for truth and learning, a curiosity about nature, and we suffer over the things and people we want or have lost. None of this can be explained by examining our parts. We exist as a whole and unique organisms. We are part of nature, and nature it is seamless. Whoops. A connected whole. Only in our explanatory system is it separated. Okay. So in other words, pain is of the body, suffering is of the mind. Think about that. Okay. The seamlessness of nature. If we look at nature through our modern Western eyes, we see entities that appear to be separate and distinct. If we view nature through others' eyes, the eyes of the Old Testament, psalmists, or other stories that inspire Native Americans, the world appears whole and seamless. In nature, separation is an illusion, not a reality. Like the mind-body split, the splits we see are a product of our thinking. The seamless world exists right in front of our eyes, right? The problem of separateness is with me, the perceiver, not with the objects perceived. I simply cannot see the connectedness. When I change my perspective for a moment, I can see unity everywhere when he's looking at nature and stuff. In nature, there is one cycle of intimate relatedness. From my eyes, there are only separate parts and things. In fact, we've created dozens of disciplines within science to explore each separate thing or class of thing. A great book on that is No Boundaries. The fruits of this scientific understanding are tremendous. This is nowhere more evident than in medicine. We can understand parts magnificently and generate valuable information, but our very process of breaking apart for the sake of understanding blinds us to a deeper truth about life, its seamlessness, its unity, its total independence. The man in the 5-foot scarf. Okay, so this is where he meets Umberto Maturana. Okay, he went to the seminar, Language, Biology, and the Nature of Life. The seminar leaders were two Chileans, Fernando Flores. Fernando has made important contributions to the understanding of language, culture, learning, and entrepreneurship. The other presenter was the biologist Umberto Maturana. Okay. After years of studying biological evolution, how we came to be, and experimental neuroscience, how nerves and brains work, Maturana reached two important conclusions that may seem simplistic at first glance, but they are, in fact, very deep in their implications. Okay, so your first thought would be possibly like, I already know this, right? Or that's obvious, but it's not obvious. It's only obvious if you live your life in that way. So that's why just stick with me on this. Okay. Maturana's first conclusion is that all living systems are closed. What this means in everyday terms is that you, me, and all living beings, even a simple single-celled organism, respond to environmental events in a way that reflects their internal structure. To put it another way, the behavior of living things is not dictated by the environment, but is a reflection of the internal structure activated by the environment. Now, like, it's easy to read that and be like, yeah, no shit. It's another way, another way of reading that is to recognize that each and every one of us are closed systems, right? That we really live life as if it was an external experience, but we're closed systems. So all experiences are internal experiences. They're based on perceptions of reality, not reality, right? And so this starts to really kind of open up certain things. And this is not from a metaphysical standpoint. This is from a biologist standpoint, like proving it, right? some really cool stuff, which we'll get to. Okay, for example, some bacteria have the structural capability to eat certain sugars, others do not. If a scientist places a sugar-eating bacterium near a trough of sugar, it moves towards the sugar triggered by its presence. If a scientist puts a non-sugar eating bacterium in the same environment, it does not move towards the sugar. It is not triggered by the presence of sugar. Its structure does not allow it to be triggered. We say it doesn't want the sugar. This is a profoundly radical idea. When I first heard it, I couldn't grasp it. Maybe it's the same for you. If you think it's just simple and easy, then you're not grasping it. Sitting in the lecture hall, I wondered, how could the environment not instruct us? Is life simply a reflection of our structure? The best way for you to deal with this biological truth at this moment is not to try and refute it or to totally understand it. Just try to dwell with it. Like a big question, could this be so? An external trigger, an event in the environment, like pulling the cord, doesn't change the machine, it activates it. My car key doesn't cause the engine to start. Rather, it triggers a set of parts that constitute the machine's structure. My pulling the lawnmower cord does not tell the machine to get ready to cut the grass. Instead, it activates the mechanism designed and organized to cut grass. As Maturana continued his argument, he proposed that people are like machines in regard to our relationship with the environment. A machine is a thing designed to perform a specific set of tasks. Its parts are designed and organized to do that job. When activated, the machine does the job that its structure is designed to do. For instance, when I start my lawnmower, it doesn't make coffee, it cuts grass. It does what its structure allows it to do when I pull on its cord. You guys with me so far? When you think about your life and Maturana's first conclusion, what do you see for yourself? Whatever it is arises from and lives within your structure and is triggered by the events in your life. You instinctively know how a car or lawnmower starts, though I doubt that you have ever thought of it in the way I described it. Your actions with lawnmowers and cars are consistent with your understanding of how machines function. If you turn the key and the car doesn't start, you don't go to a locksmith for a new key or to an orthopedic doctor to examine your arm. The car not starting implies that something in its structure is out of whack, and since the car isn't a living system with self-healing capabilities, you take it to an auto mechanic for repairs. Maturana's claim was that not only do machines work this way, but the living systems work this way as well. That behaviors elicited by the environment are determined by the structure of the living thing. The environment releases or calls forth these behaviors, but does not determine them. The environment is like the starter key. We are like the car. Maturana gave the name structural determinism to this notion. Just stick with me. Like the frog, all living things act. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so Maturana, what he did was, probably should read this even though, like I didn't. The frog with the rotated eye. Maturana cited one of his own experiments, the frog with the rotated eye, to support his claim that all living things are closed, structurally determined systems. At an early stage of a frog's development, Maturana surgically rotated one of its eyes 180 degrees without damaging the frog or its eye. However, the frog's structure had now been altered and it acted consistent with its new structure. When Maturana covered the frog's normal eye, the frog could only see with its rotated eye. This caused visual images that normally fall on one side of the frog's retina, the light-sensitive tissue at the back of the eye, to land 180 degrees away from the other side of the retina. When that occurred, unusual things happened to the frog's behavior. Normally, if a fly showed up in the frog's field of vision, it would shoot out its tongue to catch the fly. Lunch. But because of the change in its eye, the frog shot out its tongue 180 degrees away from where the fly was. No lunch. The frog's actions were consistent with its structure, but wrong for catching the fly. In Maturana's terms, the environment triggered the frog to respond. The response was a manifestation of the frog's altered structure. Without the good eye, this would be one very hungry, frustrated frog. Fortunately for the frog, it learned an effective behavior with time and practice and finally could catch flies despite its altered structure. Like the frog, all living things act in a structurally determined way. I mean, like, if you think about it, Consider this on the deepest level that you can. We're all internally consistent, highly interdependent, structurally determined events. The environment did not came Barbara to experience the secrets of bodily events. Rather, it triggered her structurally determined system. All right, perception is structurally determined. Okay, after Maturana had shaken my scientific worldview that we take in information in with his first observation, he rocked me again with his second observation about what it is to know something. In his view, perception, seeing, does not involve taking in an event or a thing, analyzing or trying to understand it, knowing, and then acting accordingly. Rather, perception and knowing are not representations of reality. They are reflection and action of what you as a mechanism see, understand, or do. In short, perception is structurally determined. Let that hang for a little while. What does Maturana mean by this phrase, structurally determined? An easy way to grasp what he's saying is to imagine for a moment that you're a 15th century Italian. At that time, you lived in a culture that believed the earth was flat. If you stood on a beach in Genoa and watched a sailboat eventually sail off into the distance, getting smaller and smaller, what would happen? If you had a friend on that boat, you'd panic because you'd perceive that the boat would fall off the edge of the earth and that your friend would perish. Your perception is real enough to you, as your sweaty palms would indicate. What you wouldn't see is that your perception is the result of the flat earth common sense of the time embodied in your structure. Your structure would act consistent with your beliefs. A modern example reinforces this point. Do you love to watch sunsets? I do. Poems, songs, romance, peaceful endings to summer days of joy. All of this comes up for me at a sunset. The only problem with this is that for 400 years, we have known that the sun does not set at all. It stays where it is. The earth turns. Yet the next time you see a sunset, I guarantee that you will see it set. Your old romantic structure tells you so, right? I suggested this was not school material where he learned about things. This was a different kind of learning. I advised him to keep listening, ask questions, and trust me to teach you. Cool. Robert said, I hate the state of confusion I'm in. The uncertainty of this kind of learning makes me uneasy. I asked him a question, not for an answer, but to invite his reflection. How come not having the answer makes you uneasy? He grew quiet and sat back in his chair, thinking about what I had said. The implications of Maturana's teachings are tremendous. First, if you want to change yourself, you have to change your structurally determined responses, not alter your environment. Our tendency is to blame others or play the victim, are threatened. Second, if your responses are determined by your structure, and if your structure is developed in your past, then at any given moment, you are doing only and exactly what your past allows. This gave me the biological basis for compassion and respect for myself and others. We are doing only what we can, given our history. So, given Maturana's view, how is change possible? The key, as you will learn later in this chapter, has to do with certain properties of the brain itself. It is plastic, by which I mean that its very structure can be altered through experience. In fact, the biological basis for all learning is structural change. So you are not condemned to repeat the same actions forever. Cool. I'm going to come back to comments in a little bit. I want to get a little bit further. What we can't see. Maybe there are possibilities for your life that you haven't seen yet. I would imagine that for each and every one of you, there are. Cognitive blindness. We simply do not see what we do not see. That is not to say we don't see shapes, colors, lights, and dark, etc. But we don't see meaning and context unless living and learning has modified our structure. Maturana calls this structural coupling. Such learning happens from immersion in a social context, a culture. I began to ask myself how my patients' structurally determined tendencies shaped their lives, generated their symptoms, and altered the course of their disease. More importantly, how could such insights be translated into creating new minds and building new bodies? The biology of a remembered present. The brain is, in large, what makes us human. 3 biological aspects make the brain unique. First, it is composed of billions and billions of cells. Second, each individual cell has innumerable connections which generate countless combinations and configurations. The brain is thus capable Oh, whoops. Sorry. The brain is thus capable of tremendous variety, change, and novelty. And third, the brain is plastic, able to rewire itself into new structural configurations in response to life experiences. When it does, new structures are generated. Subsequent life events can trigger this altered brain, and a new response appears. This is simple explanation of biological basis of learning. How the brain does this restructuring is a major focus of neuroscience. A leader in this field is Gerald Edelman, director of Neuroscience Institute and chairman of the Department of Neurobiology at the Scripps Research Institute. Edelman has been interested for years in how the experience of living things alters their structure so that the subsequent responses are changed. In short, he wants to know how living systems learn. Yeah. If you're an anti-vaxxer, some news came out that confirms your anti-vaxxiness. A study came out in the UK in their latest update about coronavirus that people who have gotten the vaccine and then later get COVID do not get full immunity as if you just got COVID. In fact, getting the vaccine and then getting COVID will not give you the same level of immunity as someone who just got COVID itself. And then the other thing that came out in the research, these are the kinds of things that, like, when you start to peel back at, like, you might not agree with me or you might agree with me, but I don't believe anything that mainstream tells me, and it's partly because of this, right? Yeah, so supposedly, at least in the research, when you look at the papers, vaccines become when you get a booster shot, it increases your immunity 95%, which is, by the way, the same as getting the double shots at the very beginning, which, if you follow that logic, means that after 11 months, there is zero protection from a vaccine. You will need a booster shot. And that will be and then that booster shot will last for 6 to 11 months. At least that's what they're showing in the UK. Anyway, back to this. Edelman's early research was not on the nervous system, but on the immune system. That's why I brought it up. This system alters its structure from its experience so that it can take new action. In this case, the new action is the production of specific antibodies against dangerous infection. This is called acquired resistance, a kind of body learning that is structurally based. Edelman explored how the immune system learns and published a series of studies in the 60s and 70s for which he was awarded the Nobel Prize. For the last 20 years, Edelman has been studying how the brain changes with experience. He wrote a popular account of his findings in 1992 called Bright Air, Brilliant Fire. Okay. On the matter of the mind, in his book, he pointed 3 aspects of the brain that account for its remarkable ability to generate both stability, repetition of function, and novelty, new structurally based functions or learnings. This first aspect is that of genetics, or what we inherit that equips us to live as humans. We have a structure in common with other human beings that allow us to speak, to walk on our hind legs. This basic set of functions is shared by members of the species, but also has inherited constraints. The second property he described as follows. During life, the connections of nerve cells are selectively strengthened or weakened by biochemical and physical processes with the recurrence of new anatomical network of functions carved out of the primary repertoire. But learning is not function specific. What I mean by this is that if I learn that certain species of snakes are dangerous, then when I see one, a complex array of behaviors is triggered in some sequence or another. My heartbeat quickens. I move quickly in the opposite direction. The emotion of fear arises, and I say that's a rattlesnake. These functions, control of heartbeat, movements, emotions, and thoughts, are anatomically situated in different parts of the brain. How do they all get activated simultaneously in a coordinated response? Edelman proposes that the different parts of the brain connect and coordinate with one another through a process called reentry. Certain reentrant patterns become strengthened between different parts of the brain to produce complex behavioral responses. Your behavior is structurally determined, and you can learn to alter your structure. Memory is not just in the brain. The state of your body in life at any moment determines your possibility and barriers for action. In his book, The Anatomy of Change, great book, Richard makes the following point. In the course of our development, we make certain choices to survive. These, guys, pay close attention to this. These choices involve dealing with fear, anger, embarrassment, etc., by some armoring or automatic behavior that assures survival. For example, a person who has been deeply embarrassed as a child may manifest an array of automatic behaviors that serve to avoid embarrassment. She'll sit in the back row at school, wear subdued clothing, never volunteer for a solo performance, etc. All unconscious actions, but patterned. In addition, her shoulders may be stooped, her voice soft, and her face expressions as she hides her emotions from what she feels is the watching and dangerous world. Such a person avoids fear and anxiety-provoking situations with a set such a person avoids fear and anxiety-provoking situations with a set of somatic, behavioral, and emotional responses that Richard calls her conditioned tendency. He writes, it's a way of being we assume when we believe that on some level our identity is threatened. Our muscles set in a particular way. We assume a certain posture, breathe a certain way, take a stance that literally manifests that tendency. This tendency, which is actually imprinted in the flesh by many years of use, takes over, and we lose touch with the present moment. Does that make sense for you guys? Right? So in other words, like, we do certain things to protect ourselves, and then later on, these become like kind of straitjackets. We are miraculously blessed creatures, but creatures nonetheless. As such, we are governed by biological principles. So here are the main points of chapter 2. The behavior of living systems is structurally determined. In this way, we are similar to machines. A machine's function is determined by its structure. Living systems, same property, right? What you experience, feel, and perceive is determined by your structure and is triggered by the environment. An external event is like a car's ignition key. It does not determine what the car does. It only activates its structure. Perception, what you see, is not reality. Perception, what you see, is not reality, but rather what your structure can and does see. The story of Togo Chief illustrates this phenomenon. His history had not produced a structure that recognized photos, hence he was blind to it. In human beings, the brain is the central organ for learning. Its natural structure has the property of plasticity. It can change through recurrent experiences. When the brain has been altered by experience and is then triggered by the environment, it acts differently than it did before the learning. The brain structure at any moment is a product of its natural inheritance and the summation of all structural modifications that have occurred during the course of its life. The human brain is unique to the animal kingdom because it has the innate capacity to generate language. This gives us the possibility of designing our future, not just extending the past, which we'll discuss in later chapters. So that's all highlighted. Okay. So let's kind of like check in with you guys, see what's new, and then we can take it further. All right, so let's see here. Gonna go back a little bit. All right, cool. Leon is in, different Leon, in Raleigh, North Carolina. Good to see you. And hey, Elizabeth, good to see you. And well, thank you for doing that, Elizabeth. And thank you. Oh, and I'll call you Lisa. If you find some time later, can you explain why what's your process to read books? Because you have ADD and it seems difficult to maintain focus during reading sessions. Then you're not reading fast enough. If you go fast enough, it will hold your attention. Rich, then let's hook up and I'll show you how to speak without the strain for long hours and even into more integrity of voice, as your energy is that of integrity on all levels. Cool. Yes, I will follow up. Thank you for sharing. We can read it. Cool. Bigger, please. Okay. All right. Patch Adams is one of my favorite movies ever. Maybe we could do another live stream with your favorite movies, Rich. Yeah, it's going to take a while because we're going to be on the books for a while. Okay. Let's see that. I often say what you mean and mean what you say. Very important. Extremely. Also concerned with how language is getting redefined, like gender, political hatred. It's Orwellian and scary. It's extremely Orwellian and scary. In fact, like, you know, what's currently going on is pretty insane. And What I think institutions don't realize is that we can reject them. So I don't believe in Webster's dictionary anymore. They've changed too many words and taken a political slant on them. So I don't trust the definitions of Webster. And if someone's talking to me and I say, I don't agree with you, what definition are you using? If they say Webster's, I don't use that. And that's like, and what you're seeing happen, at least with right and left politics, you're seeing like Ben Shapiro is making some very smart moves right now. He's hiring people that the other side is pushing out. So he just hired the woman from ESPN that is had a baby and is having another baby, so she doesn't want to take the vaccine. And so he's hiring her. She has a following, and that will cost ESPN, right? He did the same thing with Gina Carano, right, from Disney. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to make this all political, though. Sorry. But I agree. And I think that, you know, I'm kind of a nonconformist to begin with. So a lot of this stuff doesn't bother me the way I think it bothers other people. My natural reaction is to reject institutions and intelligence behind it. And my whole life has kind of been that way. That, like, you know, when I first read about the Atkins diet in 1990 or 89 or 88, I don't even remember when I read it, and I ate that way, it was the very first time in my life I wasn't hungry. And so, like, when I went to a Tony Robbins thing, Unleash the Power, and he's talking about natural hygiene, Herbert Shelton, and that everyone should just have fruit until noon, I was like, yeah, I don't agree with you. I think you're completely wrong. But like, that wasn't a popular opinion in that environment at that time, because everyone thought that Tony knows everything, and just like probably how it is at his seminars today. When I took my dad to Dr. Atkins, I took a guy that was dying, that was taking tons of medication. And Dr. Atkins took him off his medication and put him on a low carb, high protein, high fat diet. And all my dad's numbers went back to normal. Now, my dad ultimately chose that he'd rather die than not eat French fries and hot dogs and pizza. So that's what he did. And now he's dead. But like, in that time, I saw all of his disease reverse. I've also, like, in that time, read a book from a cardiologist that said, if you come to my office, I will tell you to eat the food pyramid. But if you were my friend and not in my office, I would tell you to have a more keto-friendly diet. Why would I tell you that in my office? Because that goes against the AMA's guidelines. Now, also, when I went to Atkins with my dad, the AMA was trying to kick Atkins out of the AMA, right? Because they didn't agree with his philosophy. Anything about keto today was attacked 20 years ago. So, like, for me personally, I don't really care what a doctor has to say. I care how my body reacts to things, and I trust myself over everything as long as I have an opportunity to read the research. So I don't put a lot of stock in Dr. Fauci. I don't put a lot of stock in Trump or Biden or anyone else. I think for myself. And so that's always been the way I've been. So I just don't take the same. But I think most people are sheep, and I think people are being skewed in a direction that I think is really bad for the world. Anyway, let's keep it going. Sorry to go a little off the book. Have you read Napoleon Hill? You know, I haven't read Outwitting the Devil. It's been recommended to me a bunch of times. What I would say, just to be clear about it, is that, you know, I started my first business presentation, the one where I sold my coaching program, talking about Napoleon Hill versus W. Clement Stone. Personally, I don't believe the Napoleon Hill story. So, like, as a skeptic, as someone who doesn't believe stuff that's just said, there's no proof of that actually ever happening. So I don't know if I believe it. In fact, I don't believe it. Napoleon Hill was a copywriter. He died penniless. Okay, he died penniless. So Think and Grow Rich, the guy who wrote that, died penniless. Okay, let's just be clear. So he was a copywriter. I don't believe that story ever existed about interviewing the top 500 people, and he had 16 seconds to decide. I think that's he embellished, and so that's what I think. That doesn't negate the value of his books. I did like Think and Grow Rich. I've been told I really should read Outwitting the Devil, and I plan on it, but I haven't. So at least, Renan, you know where I stand on it. And just because someone dies poor doesn't mean that their thoughts are not valuable. But if they're writing a book on how to be rich and they die poor, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. Yes, my kid's crazy, husband too. I used to be a people pleaser. I thought because I'm Pisces, That's funny. I used to be a people pleaser too. Hey, Daryl from Pompano. When you have paperback books, do you read, highlight, and then come back typing it all? And any extractor tools for Kindle that you'd recommend? There's tons of tools for Kindle. If it's non-Kindle, I use a book tool called somenotes.com or somenotes.org, and it goes through a PDF and it extracts out all the highlights. I don't type in all my highlights. I don't do that. Muscle memory, like when you learn an instrument. Yep. Fluidity. How do you get so much from the tons of books you've read? Well, because I do this, because of what I'm doing, what I'm showing you. If I got all the book notes and studied them, I would be like Neo in the Matrix when he gets plugged in and says, I know Kung Fu. Now, there's just no way to shortcut the process, right? You have to kind of work on, you have to be exposed to certain thoughts and ideas, and then you have to really kind of let them sit. You have to sit with it and see what opens up for you. Cool. I wonder if you guys still think it's obvious. I definitely believe that insight, that language creates reality. Cool. Cool. Yes. Cool. That sounds great. Rich, the book sounds so big. Hamza, do you still feel that way? That it's real basic? We're way too smart to see our flaws and wrong-minded thinking. Cultivating excellence is what I am about despite failure. Very cool. I agree with that statement about writing my thoughts down. All right. We tend to react emotionally, reactive rather than controlled. I have this problem myself. Yeah. We are a fish in water, right? Especially as it relates to language. We live in language. We have no idea how critical language is to us. Vital Lies, Simple Truths. I think I read that, and that was a good book, but that was more on self-deception. Questioning the origin of truths is vital in these big tech, deep fake news times we are in. There is really no impartiality ever, since we are all biased human beings. Exactly. But people feel more comfortable sharing their biases today than ever before and masquerading them as truth. We don't fully understand the body and issues with the gut and the brain. That had a lot to do with my suffering and my need to control every food that goes into my mouth. It took me a long time to figure out. Yeah, I think my girlfriend Kim has some of those issues, and I'd really like her to get to the bottom of it. Yep. I do meditate. Let's see. What do you consider to be 20% of the things which give 80% of the results? Perceptions and language. At the end of the day, that's what marketing is. I'm enjoying this, man. Cool. This is the key to everything. Key to everything. Yeah, that sounds good. Cool. Indeed, as anyone who has studied and spoken in another language grows to see that our idea of what is based usually on our idea of the world that was based on our world in our first years in life of family. Then we grow up and understand that step into adulthood. That is what that it is. We ourselves who will create our version of the world we choose to live in, which will be creating the world that we live in. When you study another language, you realize that all reality is incorporated. Lovely gift this session, Rich, to many and all. Oh, cool. Thanks, Sid. Just got here. Anyone can list the books he's already mentioned. We're working on one book today, and it's You Are What You Say. Thank you, Lisa. It's hard to do automatic writing myself. I realize myself self-doubting or censoring my own self. That's interesting, Oscar. You just press on. I started writing to someone like you, then I never send it. Well, Lisa, if you'd like to send me something, I will read it. You can always send me a message in either Instagram or in Facebook. Be glad to. Let's see. Is handwriting better than typing? Yes, I said that. And I know I owe you a call too, and I will. All right. I like when you share the connections you've made from this book to other things. Cool. Well, I'm planning on doing that. My guess is that awareness is the 4% he would suggest. The awareness that awareness is prime. Then the awareness of differences, differentiation that he's spoken about tonight and in the last weeks. Yeah, well, self-awareness, right? And self-observation. But we'll get there. I really want to get further in this. Oh, crap. All right. Lisa, I agree. I am two people crafted by language at home and the greater world, raised speaking Italian and English. What you say is reflected in humor. Jokes often don't translate well into different cultures. Language shapes culture. He gets many of his best ideas, I find. Glad to see them again. Also useful, of course, that being the point. They're all dead now. They live in my brain. Oh, that's sad, Lisa. Okay, and trying to master. I react with nausea. That's that. I react with nausea and a feeling. This is soul sucking, not where I want to put my energy. I felt this while trying to master Salesforce modules and abandoned it. Maybe if I was in my 20s, but not now. Yep, I've mentored myself and others. Love this. Yes, cool. All right. Hey, Asma in Egypt, and hello, Cornell. Okay, that's a note to Lisa. Yes, how are reflections? Okay, environment. Read The Biology of Belief if you want to understand that, Emmy. It's not a book that makes my list, so cool. Okay, hello, April. Good to see you. So Hamza, you said it was simple. Now you're lost. That's what I'm talking about. All right. Fascinating as it seems to me. Okay. How many of you, let me ask you this, and I'd really love an answer from as many of you as possible. How many of you have ever heard about that there's really only 5 things that you can do in language? Like, does that even sound remotely familiar to any of you? And if so, like, have you ever heard that? Like, have you ever heard that there's only 5 things that you can do in language? You can make a request, you can make a promise, you can make an assertion, right? And a few others. Have you ever heard of that? All right. And as I'm waiting for your answers, have you ever heard that there's only 5 things that you as a human being, me as a human being, that we can do with language? Because that's where this is leading to. That's where this book is leading to. But in order to really appreciate that, you kind of have to go over these other things that he's covering first. And like in every place else I've been exposed to this, it was a lot more reading, a lot more work to get there. Yep, that's exactly it, Emmy. Lisa, that's not what the newest UK study shows. So just for anyone who's interested in where I like what things I read, I will tell you that I'm spending more time these days on Substack, an area that is not policed by big tech. And there's a specific reason for that, right? And the Alex Berenson is someone whose stuff I really like. He breaks a lot of stuff down. He used to be a science writer for the Times until he had some opinions that were not very popular. He's actually got a book coming out in just a few days, and that book is called Pandemania. And let's see. The name of the book is Pandemania, and the subhead is How Coronavirus Hysteria Took Over Our Government's Rights and Lives. So, Alex Berenson. Now let's see what you guys had to say. Thanks, man. And Stefan, like if you notice, if you watch the whole thing, you'll see that a lot of the predictions I made during that event have come true, which I'm pretty proud of. All right. All right. I'm looking for your answers. Yeah, well, let's see. I'm just reading your comments, guys. I don't know if this book is available on audio. I'd be surprised if it was. Okay, so you guys haven't heard this. Okay, great. So this is where it's leading to. So, you know, we've talked about, right, over many different live streams, how distinctions live in language and like they allow you to see things that without those distinctions, you would not be able to see. And because you can see things that you didn't see before, You can do things that you couldn't do before. So distinctions give you access to greater capabilities, greater ability, right? It's one of the reasons, like I've shared, like the original gurus of internet marketing, one of the reasons why they were able to do things that other people weren't is because they came with the distinctions of direct response, right? Those distinctions of direct response, I was one of them too. Learned it from Halpert, learned it from Kennedy, learned it from Abraham. When I got online, what I saw was different than someone who did not have those distinctions. I saw customer acquisition. They just saw a selling mechanism. I saw lifetime value. They didn't even think about that stuff, right? So just like there were distinctions in direct response that allowed certain people to rise to gurus very quickly when the internet first opened up, right? There are distinctions about language that you currently, even though we live in language, most of us are not aware of. And so I want to get to that, and that's in this book. So I'm going to press on, and hopefully we get there. All right. All right. All right. It's just checking in. All right. Let me do this by now. How's it going for you? All right. It's all about meditation. Guys, meditation is critical if you want to be a witness in your life, and you do. Okay. Exercise for, okay. So the following exercises help you observe that your body changes from moment to moment because of different triggerings during the day. In these exercises, you'll observe the whole body reactions to your structure and those of others. Body awareness is not a cultural strength of those in the Western world. In fact, the opposite is true. We put tremendous emphasis on reason at the expense of intuition and body listening. But body awareness is an important skill to learn because it's a fundamental component of what is called emotional intelligence. Your body is the manifestation at this very moment of millions and millions of years of evolution. You are a miracle of creation and evolution. Your body is precious, infinitely complex, and brilliantly sensitive to environmental triggers. It is the vehicle of your awareness, of your creativity, of your dignity, and of your love. But you, like most of us, rarely look and pay attention to it. Okay, observing your body, exercise 1, the mirror. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to, since we're probably, well, I'm going to just do this. No, I'm not going to do that. I am going to just, what I'm trying to do is, well, I guess I'll do this. I want to just, well, I'm just debating whether I want to keep going. Yeah, let's just keep going for now. Body awareness is not a cultural strength of the, okay, well, I read that. I did read this. All right. Okay, exercise. To increase your body awareness, stand in your underwear or en natural in front of a full-length or large mirror for 3 minutes. Notice whatever judgments or thoughts come up for you automatically. Be aware of positive judgments like gratitude, admiration, or love, right? Recognize negative judgments like I'm too fat, my hips are too big. No changes that habits like sports, physical labor, or eating too much have produced in your body. Notice the impact of age on your body. See if you can appreciate the miracle of your body and the gift of life. Keep looking for 3 minutes, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable. Pay attention to the emotions that occur in connection with your thoughts. What do you see here about the connection between your judgments and the state of your body? Look at your face, your expression, a smile, right? Notice how your body is etched in life. Take notes on your reflections to use later with daily writing, automatic writing rather. Exercise 2. For this exercise, you need to carry a small pad or paper or use a portable computer organizer. The daily event exercise helps you observe in detail the ways in which your body is triggered and changed during the course of the day. With each major daily event, an argument with your spouse, your child bringing home a report card, you're attending a meeting, a phone call from an old friend. Notice your body's reaction. Pay special attention to those situations that touch you in both good and bad ways. Take note of on the pad of paper you're carrying with you or your computer organizer. In the course of a day, you may observe tightening of certain muscle groups in place like your shoulders, your neck, your forehead, or your back. Or you may notice that your heart pounding or your palms sweating. Some people, when they are triggered, have sensations in their belly. Others reach for a cigarette or a snack. How old is the pattern of reaction that you are noting in your body? What is its history? What are the stories about life that connect with? Okay, I'm just that. All right. Look for the pattern in your body reactions to daily events. Are there reactions associated with anger, with joy, with anxiety, with frustration? Are these reactions to certain kinds of events, like a broken promise or someone making a request of you, having to place your trust in someone? Make notes in your automatic writing, which will conclude this with this chapter. Okay. Same thing with music, right? Like, music is more than meets the ears. It provides a mood-altering experience that changes your body. Moreover, it is an expression of the sound of a people or of a culture. Okay, for this, right? You're listening to a radio station that you like and are familiar with, right? Enjoy it for several minutes. Now tune to a station that you generally do not listen to. Again, listen with observe your response. Does your body want to move in rhythm with the music? Does it want to withdraw? Right? Remember, this is someone else's music. It moves them. Try this with several different radio stations. This exercise has many purposes. First, you're building your body awareness in different circumstances. Second, you become aware that your body is tuned by your history and culture to react to different experiences. Third, it gives you some awareness of your body, which will help you build relationships with others whose bodies are tuned differently from yours. Okay, does that make sense? By this, I mean, you can either feel uncomfortable or awkward with people who live and enjoy music that is different from music you like, or you can learn to tolerate your natural discomfort and listen to their music to them. There's really no right music, just different music. Take note of what you observed. Okay. Observing your body. Exercise 4, observing the bodies of others. Oh, no, Control Y. Wait, can I redo? Edit. Can I redo? There's undo, redo. All right, there we go. This exercise should be a lot of fun. I want you to pretend to be Sherlock Holmes when you observe the bodies of others. This is eye-opening if you guys do this. Remember how Holmes would astonish Dr. Watson by presenting a detailed portrait of a person from a few observations. To be a great detective, insights about others had become second nature. That is where you're headed. Here are some clues to look for when observing people. Okay. Okay. You can tell a great deal about people by their body posture. Is it centered or leaning either forward or aggressively in back, or back in embarrassment and withdrawal? You can observe someone's walk. Is it tentative, belligerent, cool, relaxed, tense, or embarrassed? You can also examine someone's facial expression. Does it show fear, anxiety, resignation, deep concern? What can you see about a person's mood in his face? Right. Other questions: are their movements stiff and restricted, free and responsive? Is their speech pedantic, tentative, or firmly assertive? Do their hands fidget, or are they relaxed? I once took a course at Harvard Medical School from one of its great teachers, Dr. Walter Bauer. On morning rounds at Massachusetts General Hospital, he would spend an eternity, or so it seemed to me, talking about a patient's hands, the strength of their hands, the hygiene of their nails, the color of their skin. From his observations, he could tell many things: how ill the patient was, how he or she made a living, his or her mood, all without laboratory results, just by looking closely. Focus, as Dr. Bauer did, on one or two strangers during the day. Do this in some way as not embarrass yourself or them. Make your observations and in private. Even imitate their posture and facial expressions to feel what it may feel like to be them. Right? So this would be sample notes: name Jack, where did you meet him, briefly at the bar. Posture: slouched down, shoulders hung forward, walk tentative. Speech: thoughtful, unanimated, never emotional, precise. Mood of the person is in. You're taking guesses here, right? Mild depression: how the world looks to this person, confusing, beating him down, almost hopeless, but still trying to figure it out, right? Brief life story for person number one, right? So that's all you do. My friends and I do this for fun sometimes. We just make up stories about people that are walking by. What do you see in this exercise about the connection between bodies, behavior, and history? Do you think that you could learn to be as clever as Holmes? Take note in automatic writing later on. Now, the other thing, though, is that, like, what do you think someone surmises based on how you carry yourself, right? On your posture, how you walk, right? How you speak. In this chapter, you have begun to develop your skill at observing your own body and the bodies of others. The body that you see is a result of a person's life, and in turn, it's the very body that shapes the present day experiences. Cool. All right. All right. Let's get her done. All right. Chapter 3, History, the Sculptor of Our Being. The mind of which we are unaware is aware of us. The first problem for all of us, men and women, is not to learn, but to unlearn, right? From the first 2 chapters, I hope you have begun to see that your behavior is a reflection of your body structure, including what we call mind. How did your structure become what it is? How were you molded into being who you are and in doing what you do today? One source of your structure is what you were born with, your foundational properties, the ability to speak, to think. These are your gifts from billions of years of evolution, right? How did your structure, how were you molded, right? All right. Human behavior is a result of weaving of innate and learned experiences. At any moment in time, a triggering event revealed the weaving of these 2 strands. How do the Pulwats do it? All right. Group it. We're not going there because I really want to get to the payoff, some of the payoffs here. So much of what we call common sense is culturally determined. Driving on the right side of the road, eating fast food, going to the movies on a Friday night, and eating popcorn in a movie theater. Each of these culturally given habits looks like the only way to live, but when we travel to new places, we see them differently, of course. As we go on, remember that the way it is nature of how culture shapes us, right? Anything that we think that's the way it is really more a definition of our culture, right? Cultural common sense is not limited to everyday habits, but pervades all realms, everything we do. In fact, we could say that learning means developing common sense. That's interesting. By this point, you can understand when I make this somewhat unusual statement. A doctor is a person who has entered into the practice typical of the culture of medicine so that his or her structure has been modified to perform the practices of a doctor. And the practices I have learned are the ones my medical culture has shown me. Actually, I'd love to know if that statement in and of itself makes sense to you guys, right? Do you understand that statement? Because if you do now, right, it might be different than when you first came in. A doctor is a person who has entered into practices typical of the culture of medicine so that his or her structure has been modified over time, right, to perform the practices of a doctor. And the practices I've learned are the ones that my medical culture has shown me. All right. Culture shapes our common sense. The era that you live in, your family, your culture, your work or profession, the unique experiences you have, both joyful and traumatic, all mold your structure as you embody them. Your habits of action, your thinking and perception, your competencies, as well as your limitations are greatly shaped by the culture around you. As you embody your history, you become a new person, a unique person. When you're triggered, you act in a unique way. As you read these lines, I encourage you to reflect on how your history, your personal remembered present has shaped you. You'll enter into this exploration in a deeper way in the exercises, but for now, think about how your cultural background, your family, your schooling, your work experiences, your romantic experiences have all shaped your life. Right? Like, we each live a different life. We each experience different things as we grow and get older, right? So there is no question that being raised by the guys that were in the movie Goodfellas, right, and the book Wise Guys impacted me. There's definitely, I was impacted by sitting next to Jordan Belford in his first stock job when it was my after high school job, right? I used to take the bus there and sat side by side next to Jordan Belford, the Wolf of Wall Street. I've had countless experiences that have all come together to make me who I am, as you have. Okay, let's go back. Thus far, I've talked about how history shapes you in terms of skills and cultural and personal habits. Historic learning also occurs at the level of emotions. Joseph Ledoux, I'm probably pronouncing his last name wrong, has written an informative book about emotional learning called The Emotional Brain. In it, he describes the anatomical and physiological aspects of how our structures become shaped and molded to exhibit certain emotional responses. The brain contains a structure called the amygdala, right? From the Greek word almond, which is present in humans, but also in many other animal species. The region of the brain receives sensory stimuli, signals from the outside world. When the amygdala is activated, it produces an alarm response, which assists the animal in avoiding or fleeing from that threat. This response is expressed through stress hormones, adrenal hormones, and the mobilization of muscles of movement and the heart. The hormone produces an instant, widespread change in the body's chemistry. With experience, the amygdala's response is susceptible to learning, structural changes. For instance, the trigger that activates the mechanism can become significantly more sensitive so that it fires off with less stimuli. This change in threshold involves chemical or structural changes in the nervous system. For our purposes, this mechanism can learn, and the learning is emotional learning. PTSD illustrates one kind of emotional learning. People suffering from PTSD have experienced a traumatic situation far outside the realm of normal life, such as the horrors of war, parental abuse, rape, etc. During such an event, the body danger signals bombard the amygdala. This heightens the activity and makes it extremely sensitive to subsequent signals. Other sights, smells, and sounds associated with the event, the clap of a gunshot, the flash of an explosion, the cry of a person in pain somehow become linked in the brain with this traumatic event and its mobilizing response. Let's just see where you guys are at. All right. At a later moment, an event like one of the associated stimuli, such as the slamming of a screen door or the flash of a firecracker, triggers the body's massive conditioned response. To make matters worse, the conscious part of the brain then experiences an array of bodily changes of automatic mobilization, the stress response. Okay. Drifting. Experience molds the nervous system and the whole body so that their responses in the future events or thoughts are altered. I set out to examine how your structure became what it is so that you respond as you do to life events. A large part is what you inherited from your ancestry, what you were given historically. On the foundation of inheritance, who you are today is the result of the molding experiences of the drift of living your particular life. Understanding your history does not change who you are, but it gives you a sense of your coherence. You can see yourself as an unfolding organism, as a work in progress. As long as you are alive, you can alter your structure with new practices and new learnings. The wolf's children, right? Like, I don't even like these kids that were found that were raised by wolves, rendered them somewhere between human and wolf. In this way, their nervous system has changed to support a new repertoire of activities. Finally, I suggested that in addition to your thoughts, action, and identities, how you feel emotionally is partly learned. Ledoux's work shows that much of your emotional life and your mood lives in the structural characteristics of your nervous system. Begin to reflect on how your historic drift has shaped some of your basic beliefs about money, family, career, racial difference, men, women, etc. Start to observe some of your automatic thoughts, emotions. Also begin to reflect on how you learn these reactions. As you do, I want you to realize that this may provoke some uncomfortable feelings. When some people begin to grasp their automaticity, the degree in which their life is lived as a machine-like response to the environment, they fall into a mood of hopelessness and despair. All right. Learning occurs most powerfully when you acknowledge fully where you are at this very moment with truthfulness and authenticity and also compassion. You are your history in this special sense. If you accept this, you'll be able to learn and improve your relationships, your self-expression, and your well-being. If you reject this, you'll spend the rest of your life looking for an imaginary right world of safety. Okay, so here are the points in chapter 3. And then finally in chapter 4, we get to what I wanted to get to. Okay, you are born with a genetic inheritance, the raw material of your being. This establishes a foundation of possibility for you. In addition to what you share with all humans, you are unique because of your own biological structure, which has been shaped by your life experiences. This shaping occurs in your cells and organs as you learn, and especially in your brain. The brain is the most plastic of your organs. Culture Family and social class also shape you without awareness. The Pulwat story shows this. Pulwat sailors learn their style of navigation just by growing up in their culture. All right. In addition, you also learn by intention, as you did when you enrolled in driving school or took ice skating lessons. At first, you needed a teacher to provide you with clear distinctions for action. With practice and repetition, your body changed and you could drive a car or skate without even thinking. Driving and skating now live in your body. You are a driver or a skater. History shapes your body in all these ways. When you act or when you react, your remembered present, your history speaks through your body. In this way, your history shows you a world and how to act and live in it. But at the same time, it limits your freedom and your possibilities. The Arab-Israeli conflict, as described by Shimon Peres, shows how the combatants' thinking is so filled with blame and fear that peace will never occur without reshaping not just what the combatants think, but how they think. That is, this is what leaders and great teachers do. They show the historic nature of our positions and invite us to build new possibilities for being and living. History shapes not only your cognitive life, but your emotional life. You react to a test, to learning, to challenges, to loss. Awareness of your historically shaped reactions is the first step towards finding freedom's door. A brief check on previous learnings. Okay, so this is, I'm going to, damn it. Well, let's press on. Well, okay, let me just see here. Where do we get into? All right. So we just pull this up so I can at least mention it. Okay, so here are, I'm just going to cover this really quick. Then we're going to go back to comments. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation for a minute. All right. Okay, right. Yeah, so let's just kind of, languaging, like all behaviors is, or actions is structurally determined, right? Keep in mind there is no such thing as a funeral, only the practice and standards that a group shares as symbolized by that word. That's why in some cultures we celebrate someone dying, in other cultures we have tremendous sorrow, right? There's no such thing as a funeral. Like in the real world, there is a collection of activities that different cultures have labeled a funeral. Our automatic languaging not only coordinates social phenomena, but it also reveals our personal orientation towards others, right? For example, and this is a great example. I love this because I see people like this all the time. For example, one of my patients was particularly shy woman named Ellen. Once when entering the classroom, I actually bumped into her. Before I had a chance to apologize, she said, "I'm sorry." "Why apologize?" I replied. "I walked into you." Some people have a natural way of like apologizing for their existence on a very continual basis, which you can certainly like read into, right? I noticed during subsequent classes that Ellen apologized repeatedly, even when she raised her hand simultaneously with another participant. Do you know people like Ellen? I do. I interpret such automatic language as part of her orientation to living, deeply embedded in her structure. Each time she apologized, Ellen deepened her tendency to hold herself small and inferior. It was almost as if she saw herself as a walking interference in the lives of others. Her unawareness of this behavior allowed her to practice over and over again this out of self diminution, right? Now, like, I'm sure we all know people like this, but recognize that it's really a clue as to what's going on deeper. Okay. All right. Okay. What if I told you there were only 5? And we're going to return to this next time we talk, I think. What if I told you there were only 5 actions that you make in language? That would simplify your task a lot, wouldn't it? Well, it's true. When Fernando, and that's Fernando Flores, told me this, I was amazed. "You got to be kidding me," I exclaimed. "So many words and only 5 kinds of actions?" Fernando explained that each class of words perform a different action and each one is distinct from the others. Surprisingly, you already know these distinctions. You'll recognize them as I describe them. Let's look at each one in turn. Requests. A request A request is an action that you've taken when you seek the assistance of another in satisfying an underlying concern that you have. You want something. A request is made in the present at the moment you say it, but it invites a future action by another or others. A request also involves a commitment on the part of the requester to be satisfied if the conditions specified in the request are met. If these conditions are met and the requester is not satisfied, the person fulfilling his promise may see the requester as manipulative, unfair, or demanding. Okay? Does that make so? Like when you make a request, the subtext of that request is that you'd be satisfied with its completion, right? If you're not clear on that, it sets up for conflict. All right, next, promises. Promises. So we have requests. Second one is promises. A promise is what you speak to indicate your commitment to fulfilling what someone else has requested. It implies that you understand his or her request fully and you are competent and sincere about fulfilling what he or she has asked. Trust is a very important judgment that we make about someone's rigor and sincerity as a promiser. When promises are not fulfilled and a person fails to take care of the consequences of that failure, the requester may feel betrayed or become resentful and begin to distrust that person. What is important to see here is that the fundamental social action of trust lives in our assessment of others' sincerity, ability, and the responsibility to keep their promises and commitments. Without trust, relationships, organizations, and societies are in a state of constant vigilance and chaos. Next are declarations. Now, I'm not expecting, like, just by sharing this with you that all of a sudden the lights open, right? But what I want you to understand is that when you do understand these distinctions and actually, like, they are the filter that you see conversation in, right? What will open up to you is hard to explain, but you will see that you have not been as effective in language as you could be. Declarations. A declaration is an utterance in which someone with the authority to do so brings something into being that wasn't before. The Declaration of Independence is an example of this linguistic act. The United States was brought into existence when a group of men empowered to do so declared independence from England. Of course, they had to back up their speaking, right, with many other actions, fighting a war, setting up laws for the new country. But with that declaration, the possibility for a country was created. Personal declarations such as I will lose 30 pounds by July 1st, or I will listen to my wife's concerns with more patience, have the power to shape our lives if followed by consistent behavior. The question to think about declarations are, does the person have the authority to make this declaration? And what is this person's level of personal commitment to living his or her life in a way that will fulfill the declaration? One of the most important of our personal declarations is the act of forgiveness. This crucial declaration is a commitment not to carry past resentment into the present and future. We are all human and make mistakes, sometimes egregious ones. But people break their promises to us in ways that may cause us pain. The act of forgiving allows us to free ourselves from the burdens of guilt, anger, and resentment. Forgiving someone doesn't mean that you are obligated to interact with him or her. You may or may not do that based on your assessment of whether you can build trust anew and that person, and of course, on your preferences. Trust allows us to live at peace in relationships, and forgiveness allows us to free ourselves from resentment and build life anew. Forgiveness is not forgetting. We remember. Hence, forgiveness is a stance that we must declare over and over again whenever resentment and anger arise. Okay? Assessments. Assessments is a judgment that you make about the world in the interest in taking some action. For example, in the interest of going to a ball game, I might make the assessment, it's a beautiful day, in which no wind and temperature of 80 degrees are my standards. On the other hand, in the interest of going sailing, my assessment, it's a beautiful day, means the wind is blowing, the harder the better. In both cases, the assessment beautiful implies first a statement for the sake of something, sailing or baseball, then a standard, e.g. no wind or 20 knots. And finally, a judgment, beautiful or not beautiful. Assessments are never the truth. They are statements people make that fulfill some concern with their particular standards. Marketing spends a lot of time in assessments. And generally, many of the assessments that we use in marketing are ungrounded. We'll get to that in a second. Okay. Okay. Assessments are never facts, even though a lot of people may share that assessment. The assessment. They are always informed by the interests and standards of the person making the statement. However, assessments may be grounded or not, i.e., there may be some evidence on which the assessment is based. In the case of a baseball game, the temperature of the day. In the case of sailing, the wind velocity. Rigor is related to the diligence and skill a person has in grounding assessments. A doctor, for example, is a person who has been schooled in making grounded assessments for the sake of improving patients' health. A lawyer makes grounded assessments for the sake of clients' interests under the law. See, it all happens in language. Your historic narratives are assessments of yourself and others. Others are smarter than me. You can't trust men. The future is hopeless. These assessments are generally ungrounded, but nonetheless determine actions you will and will not take. Pause for a few minutes. Examine some of the automatic assessments that shape you. Think about age, money, race, physical appearance, health, and sex. What are the ungrounded truths that dominate and influence your life? Now, one of the things that I want to mention just real quick, right, is that if you read Language in the Pursuit of Happiness, right, these are covered in there too, right? Assertions, declarations, assessments, requests, and promises. But let's keep going. All right, because we're almost done. Oh, look, this is me facing this way. This is me facing that way. Okay. Your historic narratives are assessments of yourself and others. Others are smarter than me. Okay, right. Okay, pause for a minute. Examine that. Okay, assertions. An assertion is a statement you make for which you are willing to provide evidence. In other words, a society builds certain ways of establishing and asserting common, often quantitative values, weight, length, and height and time, IQ, etc. These assertions live for us as facts. They are either true or false. If you make an assertion and cannot provide proof, sometimes you have to withdraw the assertion. If you make an assertion contrary to or ignoring the evidence, then you are mistaken or lying. Requests, promises, declarations, assessments, and assertions are the 5 basic building blocks of linguistic behavior. The concepts are simple, but it takes time for you to become a rigorous observer of the breakdowns so that you can redesign your actions. It took me years to embody this material, and I'm still engaged in breaking old habits and developing more rigor. So don't expect to learn it all at once. Remember that learning involves structural alteration of your body. This takes practice and more practice. As you begin to look with these distinctions, you'll see more. As you see more, you can do more. Then you'll begin to embody these skills, and they will happen without conscious thinking. Be patient with yourself. Cool. Let's keep it going here. Okay, a little bit longer. Communication failures cause havoc. The fundamental challenge of all relationships guaranteed to produce miscoordination and conflict is a failure to listen. As I've said, communication and language between two people in communication between two biological beings who literally live in different cognitive universes, right? Closed systems, like we talked about earlier. When you speak to another person, his or her system is triggered in unique ways that differ from how you would be triggered. When you speak, you are literally joining two worlds. All right. The cardinal sin of communication, which comprises all speech and relationship, is assuming that what was said is what was heard. To avoid this, you must ask, observe, inquire, discuss, and listen for what the other person understands. I call the common failures of communication the 10 linguistic viruses. As I describe them to you, think of how you can use these common breakdowns and what you see in them as a platform for your listening. There's a difference between hearing and listening, right? And we can get into that next time. I call these breakdown linguistic viruses because they attack relationships, alter the structure of individuals in them, and cause dissatisfaction, bad moods, even ill health. Learning what they are will allow you to listen to others more effectively and heal them and yourself. So that's where we're going to end for this. And I'm going to circle back to figure out what I am going to do on Tuesday. On Thursday, my plan is to be out at in Orlando for Todd Brown's Top 1% MFA mastermind. I wanted to get to that. I wish I could have like not skipped anything and just gotten to that. But yeah, for me, everything is very context dependent. And I don't know if that sounds like an excuse. It sounds like an excuse to me, but it really isn't. Like there is no favorite book of mine. There are favorite books on certain topics at certain times based on whatever it is I'm going through. What I will say though, and it's something that I keep going back to, especially when I look at books like this, is that, my dad was relatively successful, certainly had friends that were much more successful. And there was a gentleman that was extremely successful. His name was Meyer Berman. And he was known as Meyer the Buyer. I don't know why, but he was one of the biggest short sellers on Wall Street. And this is going back 40 years ago. In fact, he became very well known because he shorted U.S. Surgical Steel or whatever, U.S. Steel, for a very long time. He was upside down by hundreds of millions, and then the stock broke and he made billions. And one of the things that he told me, because he was friends with my dad, he told me that to study English, the better I'm able to communicate, the more successful I'll be. And of course, I was a teenager that went in one ear and went out the other. But more and more, especially as I get more intimate with these types of books, I recognize how much that we really do. We live in language. We live in language like fish live in water. And we do so many things with language that we are not aware of, that we're doing it to ourselves, doing it to others. And, it's kind of like you have common questions that come into your head on a consistent basis. And odds are those are not questions that serve you well, right? Like what I was sharing at the beginning of this live stream today, that I noticed in myself, right? A couple things that I really don't like, right? One, when I'm working on something, a lot of times I'll ask myself a question: why am I so tired, even when I'm not? And what I've realized is that that's a way for me to cue up an excuse of why I should stop working. So nowadays, when that thought even pops into my head, I'm not tired whatsoever. In fact, I'm insulted that I even brought that up to myself, right? So that's one. Another that I really don't like about myself, and something that I would say is still there, but my hope is that it gets less and lessened with each passing day, is that I listen from a place of I already know, which is horrible. Absolutely, positively horrible. And what I mean by that is that why it's horrible is that I'm always in a hurry when someone else is talking, because I have this underlying continual statement going on in my head saying I already know, which certainly is not helpful whatsoever, right? So what about you? Are there consistent things that you say to yourself that really don't serve you? Can you look at yourself in a mirror naked and not have any negative judgments about yourself come up? Because if they do, they're there, right? So I want to kind of impress upon you, right, that the more that you can, hold on, just looking here for something. Let's see. All right. Oops. Cool. All right. So let's see here. What kind of questions do you guys have before we just call it a day? I know I went long, but Claire, if you're still out there, by all means, that was nice to see you here. By all means, you can ask a question. Okay, so cool. So here's April. I tell myself a story of not having enough time all the time. It's frustrating. Now, so April, the question, and I'm not asking you to answer me, but I'm like to ask yourself, right, is how does that play out for you when you say that? Like if you say, I don't have, this story about not having enough time, if it gets you into action faster, if it gets you getting your stuff done better and faster and more complete, that's great, right? But if it doesn't, right? If it causes you to say no to certain things, if it forces you not to spend the time necessary, like you don't make time for greatness, then that does cost you, right? So, April, the first thing is understanding that you tell yourself that story on a consistent basis. Then it's about recognizing and being the witness, self-observation, right? Of what that statement, how that plays out for you inside your body. How do you react to it, right? Because we all don't have a lot of time, right? Like our time on this planet is limited, and it's the one thing that you never get more of. And so it's not necessarily such a bad thing to feel that way. What potentially is bad is how it limits you by thinking that way, right? So, like I said, it's so easy when we look at a book like this to say to ourselves, this is simple. I already know this. When in fact, there are so many things that we're doing consistently that we don't even recognize that make a huge difference in our lives. One of like, just, and I know I've said this countless times, but like one of the reasons why I am so fascinated by distinctions is that I see things different than you see them. Mark Ford sees things different than I see them. Jay Abraham sees things differently than I see them. And it's based on the distinctions that we have. So when you recognize that, right, then understanding that we really do live in different worlds. We are in the same world, but what we experience of it is totally different, which is why I can say that most entrepreneurs are blind to the biggest opportunities that are right in front of them because they don't have the distinctions to even sort for that, right? And so this is all encompassing, right? It's the reason why there are 60 books on that list of just books that I've read that are related to transformation or speech acts or language or linguistics, because it is so hard to really get access to this, because our first reaction is, this is common sense. I already know this. And so let's see what April has to say. All right, let's go back. Oh, good, Claire. I'm glad you're here. When you meditate, do you use any music or just silence? I go back and forth. So my favorite, I've listened to a lot of different guided like meditations, and I happen to like one of them. I do some meditating just here in my office here alone, right? And I'll do that in front of my red light, my Juve red light. But I'll also do it on my inversion table back at the house. And when I'm doing it on the inversion table, I like to listen to Sam Harris. Sam Harris is just a intellectual heavyweight, and he has a good way of positioning meditation in a way where you're really clear about what you're trying to do and the benefits you're trying to capture for yourself. And so I really like Sam Harris's Waking Up. And that's probably my favorite, but they're all good and really just what resonates with you. But I think if you only do guided, then you don't necessarily have the ability to just meditate on your own, which I think is really important. So that would be what I would say there, Claire. And it makes me feel stressed that I have to set deadlines for things to get it done faster, but that stress is not good, right? Well, so, if I was working with you, April, and like, I don't do that much one-on-one anymore, but like in that capacity, right, as someone who's been an entrepreneur, also chain of hypnosis centers and, studied the mind a ridiculous amount, like what is the difference between like anticipation, positive anticipation and stress? Like, do you know the difference? Like in your body, like this is me being positively excited about an outcome versus me being negatively stressed about an outcome. Can you identify the difference, or is it just a label that is arbitrarily assigned? And there is no right or wrong answer here, but give you an example, right? So I think I've shared this with you guys. I've been a victim as a child of a lot of trauma. And part of the reason I'm able to do certain things that other people aren't is because I'm not as connected to my body, right? And that, has its good things and it has its bad things. So I'll give you a good thing, right? So I've had this, I used to get this rash on my foot all the time, like all the time, right? It was annoying. It would come and go. It was extremely itchy when I had it. And, but whenever I went to the doctor, it wasn't there, right? Finally, one time this was when my doctor was Al Sears. It's now Mark Rosenberg, but back then Al's still a friend. But anyway, Dr. Al Sears. And he looked at my foot and I said, Doc, like this comes and goes. Is it a fungus? Like, what is this? Can you give me something for it? And he looked at it and he's like, that's not a fungus. And I'm like, well, then what is it? He's like, that's anxiety. And that's interesting to me. It was interesting then. It's still interesting to me now because I don't feel like I've ever experienced anxiety. Because when my heart is racing, when I'm amped up, that's an experience I really enjoy. So even though parts of my body have been anxious, it didn't get into my head that I was anxious. And so I would have this like come and go on my foot. So I'd say for the last, God knows, I went off it for like 2 years, but for the last decade or so, I take a very low dosage of Lexapro, which is an anti-anxiety antidepressant. But I take it more because like when I take it, I don't have that problem on my feet. Now, every once in a while, when I get really stressed, like you can see here when I'm sick or something, you can see that my elbows don't look so nice. That's just another way that my body displays it, but I'm not in touch with it, right? So I'm curious what the difference is for you of positive stress, like positive excitement and anticipation versus negative stress, and how they feel different, how you know one is one versus one is the other, like if you weren't able to put names to it. And odds are is that you have, there are certain things you say to yourself, certain things you imagine, et cetera. But it's not, right? Like, April, I hope that you get, and we all get, right, that it has nothing to do with the thing, right? Like that's the whole idea that we're all closed systems, that anything that is happening internally is self-generated based on perceptions or judgments or evaluations, which is why I love that statement. Life is an internal experience that we mistake for an external one. We're constantly trying to change external things so that we feel different internally, even though we're closed systems. And that really had the only way that we're impacted by out there in here is based on rules in here. So I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I did want to share with you and apologize. I wanted to apologize because my team is constantly trying to move stuff forward. And so I've been sick and they're like, what are we going to do this one on? I'm like, okay, we'll do my top 5 books. And now they want to know what the next one is. And we didn't even get deep enough into my first book. And, I could have started this book just kind of talking about those 5 areas of language, but I don't know that you can appreciate it to the level that I want to share it by just thinking these are not just tips, right? And there are a sequence of books that I've been exposed to over time that in their total have really impacted me and altered my thinking. But each book individually, maybe not, but in collective, they did. And so these books on transformation, right? I think I went here. There we go, right? All of these books are books I've read, highlighted, right? And now I've put into Evernote. And my goal is to get through a lot of these with you. And I really believe that it's almost impossible to not become a much better marketer if you or copywriter or person at the end of the day by appreciating these distinctions, right? So in other words, just like the distinctions that we learned from the original gurus learned from Kennedy, Halpert, and Abraham and brought online, helped us market better than other people and kind of be able to set the course of history in certain ways. There are distinctions for living your life. And these distinctions about living your life, right? When you know them, allow you to do things that if you don't know them, you cannot do because you don't even see the opportunity. And so my experience around entrepreneurs for the last 20, 30 years is that there is like successful entrepreneurs see things that unsuccessful people do not see. And my desire is to get everyone to that place, right? To get to a place where you see more, so you can do more, so you can experience more, so you can be more. And it's what I'm most passionate about, right? As it relates to people, humanity, and life. When it comes to work, what I'm most passionate about right now is building the most advanced AI system that really has your best interest at heart. And I have to have a call with Matt, but I'm pretty confident that platform will be called Iggy. And Iggy is African for only son, and it's also a palindrome, Iggi, right? It's spelled the same forward and backwards. I've named all my daughters, because I only have daughters, palindromes. Ava, A-V-A, L-E-L-L-E. All the names of my kids are palindromes. And so what I believe I'm doing business-wise, and this is what has my complete focus, my complete passion, is developing this AI platform that, if I'm successful, will be really the first AI platform that has your best interest designed at heart, to give you the best marketing strategy for you specifically, based on everything that system knows about you, based on every marketing tactic that showed you, whether you would use it or not, why you wouldn't, what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish. And so, no, this is not a bot. This is true AI. It requires us to have a tremendous amount of data, building out the platform in the way. So I've shown some of you guys the new platform. That won't be released to the public till February. And obviously I will share lots more about that. But my goal is I really want to share more of this. And then after I'm done sharing this, I will give you the notes to this in our Facebook group, and then we'll go to the next one. So I'm going to have to tell my team that we're going to go over like more of this, and I'm just going to have to find a clever name or concept so that like it, we can build the thumbnail that's really cool and people will come. So that's it, guys. So thanks for being here. I know that you always have a ton of choices of where you want to be, who you want to listen to, what you're doing with your time, but you decided to be here. For those of you who interacted with me, you chose to interact with me. I really appreciate that. That's what really lets the algorithm gods know that maybe they should share it with other people. And I just want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for interacting. Thank you for sharing if you did. And definitely the feedback is certainly so appreciated. Certainly wouldn't want to be here by myself. Iggy is spelled I-G-G-I, or it wouldn't be a palindrome. And just know that I didn't share this like randomly. That if I had my way, I would share a ridiculous amount about the underpinnings of transformation, right? Martin Heidegger, Nietzsche, right? Wittgenstein, Fernando Flores, Werner Erhard, John Hanley, Robert Kagan at Harvard, Jack Mesereau of transformative learning, like that's his concept, adult education. So there's Marshall Rosenberg of nonviolent communication, which is like, I see it as part of this whole area of language. So, yeah. So thank you. Appreciate you. And I don't know if I'm going to be live on Thursday. If I'm not, I will be live again on Tuesday. And then I'm going to be traveling a bit. So I don't know what the team's going to do. I don't know what the team is planning for Thursday, but maybe I'll hop on. But I come back on Friday or Saturday. Then I'm here for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then on Thursday, I'm flying to Cabo, right? For those of you who are going to join me, cool. I can't wait to hang at Amber Spears' event in Cabo. I'm there from like the 4th until the 9th. Then on the 9th, the 9th, I fly to Vegas, and then I'm in Vegas for 2 days speaking at Jeremy Blossom's event, and then heading back here. So I'm not sure when the next time I'm going to be live, other than Tuesday of next week. But I'll tell you on Tuesday, we'll wrap this up, and maybe I'll give you some other notes that of like my outline notes of transformation in total, but I don't want to go there if I can avoid that by first giving you a bunch of other notes that kind of come together. So thanks, guys. And to Higher Profits and Beyond, this is Rich Schefren, over and out. And I'll see you on Thursday, possibly. If not, definitely on Tuesday.